Well, it's been a month since I said I was going to read 2 hours 5 days a week and an hour on the weekends. That was my New Year's resolution, and it's going great so far. I've been really enjoying it. The first thing I noticed is that my reading speed has inevitably improved way more than I actually thought. So I said inevitably, but the truth is that it got faster, way faster than I expected. So last year I was trying to read at least 30 minutes a day, sometimes an hour, but I really didn't have enough time to read more than that. And in that time, I did a lot of reading along with an audiobook. So I'd listen to the audiobook of, for example, The Lord of the Rings, and I'd read along with it. And last year, what I found is that sometimes I had to pause the audiobook to try and catch up. My eyes just weren't fast enough following the Japanese text, and that could be a little bit difficult at times. Also, of course, I had to look up stuff, but that's normal. You obviously have to pause the audiobook for that. But what I found after just 1 week of reading 2 or more hours per day is that I no longer really had to do that. I guess it was just something about getting into the flow of maybe reading vertical text. I don't know what it was, but after just 1.5 weeks of reading 2 hours per day, I was able to keep up with the audiobooks that I was listening to while reading all of a sudden. I didn't change the audiobooks. I was still in the middle of the second book of the Two Towers, I think it was. I was able to just keep going until I hit words I had to look up. Then I'd have to pause the audiobook. So my speed improved dramatically. In fact, one of the things I noticed was that in between, I finished the second book of the Two Towers in The Lord of the Rings, and I read the second book of Re:Zero. That one didn't have an audiobook, so I was just reading that. I noticed that I was much faster reading that than I used to be. And then when I was done with that, that's when I really noticed going back to the audiobooks that I was much faster all of a sudden. I also noticed that I really got into a flow after about an hour of reading each day. So that second hour was always smoother. In fact, that kind of brings me to the next thing that I learned in the first week, which was that I had to be careful about not reading for too long. When I get to the 2-hour mark, I'd be in such a flow that I really wanted to read longer. And what you may see from the data here on the home screen of my Kindle, which has been jailbroken, I was reading more than 2 hours some days, sometimes close to 3 hours. And I would have liked to read even more because when you get to that 2-hour mark, I just wanted to keep going. But I decided to start stopping myself in maybe the third week because I realized it was having a negative effect on my work. I need to work too. So if I was reading more than 2 hours, it was hard to get the things done that I needed to get done. So I needed to make it a point to actually stop reading after 2 hours and to do other things. Another thing that I noticed was that my social media use essentially it went away. I was no longer using social media just because, I had 2 extra hours that I was spending on something else each day, which meant that I didn't have time to pull out my phone and look at X or Facebook or whatever. In fact, I was using it so little that I finally deleted my X account. I disabled my Reddit account, although I didn't really use that much, and a bunch of other things because I realized they just didn't make my life better. Reading is just so much better than social media. When you get back into it, you realize that every moment you spend on these social media platforms is essentially time wasted. Even though it's connected to my business and stuff, I just didn't find it worth it. So I just started deleting everything. The only thing I kept was Facebook, and that was to keep in touch with my family because they, for some reason, won't use anything else. The next thing I noticed was that I needed glasses. Oh, I can't see anything because these are reading glasses. After reading for about 45 minutes to an hour, I started to notice I was getting headaches within the first or second week. So I went and had my eyes checked out. And while they weren't really bad, it was enough to where having the reading glasses, I figured would probably save me from the headaches. And that is the truth. I got these glasses and I started reading with them and the headaches went away. So when you read a lot, you may find out that your eyes aren't so great and that you're getting old. If you're old, like me. I'm going to be 39 in a couple months. The next thing I notice is that I'm addicted to data. I love it. I can't help it. I don't know why. I just really like data. You can see from my home screen here on my Kindle, my jailbroken Kindle, just having this here every day and seeing that, today I read 31 minutes. I'm not to the 2-hour mark. I don't like that. I want to get to the 2-hour mark. I just love having all of this here. I see my total pages for the past week, 885. My one day, I read an average of 126 pages or whatever. This is because I had some people over for about a week. So you may see from my data here that for 1 week this month, I really didn't read very much at all. But I was still able to make up for it and read pretty much what my goal was for a month, which is about 50 hours a month. That'll get me to 600 hours by the end of the year, but I'm thinking it'll be more like 550 because there will be people visiting. My family will be visiting for like about a month this year, so I probably won't read much then. But just having all this data makes me want to read more. I jailbroke this Kindle. If you'd like to learn more about jailbreaking your Kindle, if you have one, you can check out the link in the description. It's a game changer for me, I think. The final thing that I learned from this first month is that I still prefer books to visual novels. I said I was going to be trying to read all the visual novels and books in my backlog, but maybe it's because of this data. I don't know. Just having the data makes me want to read the books more than the visual novels. But I think even if I was reading like my versions of The Lord of the Rings back here, I would prefer those to visual novels. And that's just for various reasons. I can pick this up anytime and read it whenever I want. I can bring it with me and read it wherever I want. I'm waiting in a doctor's office or whatever. I just read. Waiting to get a pair of glasses. I just read. So it's just much easier to use it throughout the day. I have 5 minutes here or there, pull it up. With a visual novel, there's that bit of friction that keeps you need to have like an hour or two to actually sit down, get your computer on, get the game started up, and get back into it. Maybe if you're using like text extractors and things to pull out the data, there's all this setup that goes into it. And if you have lots and lots of time, that's great. Visual novels, I still think, are great for learners. But for someone like me that doesn't have a lot of time, like, you can't beat books. And not just books. Combining them with the audio book version of the book is just... it's such a joy. Like, I really am surprised how much I've enjoyed playing the audiobook while reading the book itself. A lot of people mention how sometimes when you're reading a book, the voice in your head in your second language is not necessarily what the language should sound like and what a native reading it would sound like. And this solves that problem, for one thing. It also means that it's much smoother and it makes it more immersive than I would have imagined. I thought I'd prefer the voice in my head when I'm reading a book, but it turns out that especially with Japanese, like, the audiobook voice actors are so good. Like, they put in so much effort that it just makes it a joy to read. And I'm almost finished with The Lord of the Rings. In fact, this month, I finished 5 total books. One of those books, or 2 of those books, did not have audiobooks. 3 of the books. So the first 2 that didn't have audio books were ReZero 2 and 3, so I finished those. I finished a Tsurubara Mura book, the next one, which does not have audiobooks. And then I finished the second book in the 2 Towers of the Lord of the Rings and the first book of the Return of the King in the Lord of the Rings. And I'm almost finished with the third book, or the second book in Return of the King. So that would make it 6 books, but I'm not quite there. I've got I'll probably finish it tomorrow or the next day. I'm very close to finishing, is that English? 6 books this year already. That's really, really exciting. I didn't think I'd be able to read that much this year at all. That's the other thing. When you read 2 hours per day, the speed at which you get through books is just really, really fast, and that's exciting. Of course, if you're a complete beginner, it won't be that fast, but that's okay. You'll still get a lot further than you would have otherwise. So if you do have an extra hour or 2 per day and you're studying Japanese, setting aside the time to read, whether that's through the immersion section on our website where we have tons of graded reading material, something like Satori Reader if you're past the stuff that's on our website, or just reading a book aimed at elementary school students, that can be really, really, really beneficial. Yeah, that's it. That's what I learned in the first month.